Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our STEAM conference. We are very glad that everyone is here this morning. My name is Lina Ledesma Cortez, and I will be the facilitator for the session alongside my colleague, Annabelle Mireles. She's the Zoom room host for us. So we're happy you're here, and we are excited to get started. Thank you for joining us. I want to introduce to you Andia Pebdani, the Youth Engagement Manager for the Fleet Science Center, with the session titled Discover Your STEAM Superpower. Welcome, Andia. Take it away.
Thank you, Lina, for that introduction. As Lina mentioned, my name is Andia Pebdani. I am the Youth Engagement Manager at the Fleet Science Center, and I want to welcome you all to this session today, where we're going to be talking about discovering your STEAM superpower. I'm a giant nerd myself, so talking about STEAM and comic books is all just things that I love to do, and I'm happy that I get to share this with you. So a little bit about myself. Again, Youth Engagement Manager. That means I'm responsible for engaging children in STEM concepts and science and making sure that they can have a fun and educational experience here at the Science Center. Prior to being the manager for the program, I actually also used to be an educator. So I'm very well versed in what it takes to make something successful in the classroom, and sometimes having to think on your feet and make things happen and try to find those connections in unconventional ways. But as a manager in a program and trying to support my staff and making sure that they can also see that in the work that they do and in their own shared interests, so we can all work together to further the Fleet's mission, which is connecting people to the possibilities and power of STEM. Now, I'm saying STEM. This is the STEAMpower Conference, and I know how much we all love acronyms, and that there's constantly the acronym battle of, well, what are we doing? Are we doing STEM? Are we doing STEAM? Are we doing dreams? Are we doing hamsters to include the humanities and make sure that we're talking about every possible connection? And so there's always different acronyms that are in contention with one another, but today we're going to focus a bit more on clearly on STEAM. That's what we're here for. It's the STEAMpower Conference. And we want to give power to that A. That letter A is actually really important. As somebody who is in a science background and someone who does have a lot of creative passions, the A is really important, especially when it comes to working with our students. Without having that connection to the material, students can easily disengage with it. It's not something that they feel that they have control in. For some students, school is hard. They can't do math, they can't do science, they feel that they can't do these things because they haven't had those experiences outside of a classroom or can easily identify it. That A makes it more of an application rather than just art. Students can see how these aspects of science, technology, engineering, and math are applied in such a way. It ends up making that field more interdisciplinary. It makes it integrated and helps to make those relevant connections for them so that they can approach a problem and be very confident in solving it. A personal anecdote for myself, one of my passions is baking. And so when I was a child, I did not do so great in math. My father could probably tell a different story about how upset I would be about doing math problems, but fractions were very difficult. And my father would try to coach me on, let's try doing math this way and that way. And I just wasn't sticking. And one day in his frustration, he was just, I don't understand why you can't do fractions. You cook, it's the same thing. And me being all of a fifth grader, I was like, no, it's not. Very dramatically stormed out of the room. They're not the same thing. I don't understand how they're the same thing. And for my father, my first educator was very much, oh, light bulb. She sees them as two different things. What can I do as somebody who is supporting her to make sure that she understands what those connections are? And so approaching it that way worked for me. That might not be something that works for everybody, but for my experience, that was bridging that connection, understanding, making it connected to something that I was really passionate about and that I enjoyed. I could totally modify a recipe, but I could not add fractions together. But understanding where that overlap was made it a lot more relevant for me, and finding those connections. And it's something that as educators, we should be doing for our students. And just in terms of the fields as well, when we're making those connections, we have to think outside the box. When we're talking about STEM careers and STEM pathways and really making sure that we put kids on a pathway to success in STEM fields, we have an idea of what those STEM fields are. They're usually a word that ends in ist, chemist, physicist, biologist, but there are so many other identities that are STEM related or STEAM related, things like being a chef, being an artist, being a toy maker. A lot of these things rely on you knowing a little bit more about those science concepts, even if they don't necessarily see themselves as a STEM profession, a buttoned up STEM with a lab coat. They're still using parts and processes of science, technology, engineering, and math on a daily basis. And so really helping people identify what we do and seeing ourselves as confident in STEM will set students up for success. That way they can see all the things that they like doing as an opportunity for them to do STEM. It shouldn't have to be a sacrifice of one over the other. They should be able to enjoy all the things. Well, I think that's a bit enough of me talking for a little bit. We're actually going to take a quick creative mind break. So we're actually going to, I'm going to give you a scavenger hunt. So I'm going to set a timer for a minute. And in that minute, I would like you to go and find your imagination. Hopefully you brought that with you. Paper, tape, and scissors. The last two are completely optional, but I'm going to go ahead and set that timer. So let's see. And start. All right, that's been about a minute. So hopefully you've managed to find a piece of paper. If not, you can use newspaper, you can use magazines, rip them apart, use whatever you have handy, because for the next 5 minutes, we're gonna have you guys work and try to create, do a little bit of a superhero challenge. We're going with a superhero theme. And so I think we all have our phones handy or something of a similar size. So we're actually going to turn your phone into a superhero. It already has a lot of power. It connects you maybe to this meeting. It connects you to your work, your social life. But you are actually going to make it levitate. So using that one piece of paper, we want you to try to lift your paper off of at least 1 centimeter off of the surface. If it's your table, if it's a desk, if you're working off your lap, just try to make something and that will lift your phone about 1 centimeter off the table. If you don't have a ruler handy, centimeter is roughly the size of your thumb. So we're going to spend about 7 minutes letting you guys build and come up with some designs. Time's up for our first iteration and our only iteration today. Do I have any brave souls that would be willing to share out what they did to levitate their phone at least 1 centimeter off your table? We are aspiring to be like scientists. We have to use some of those practices, which includes sharing out our results together. If you don't want to turn your camera on, that's fine. If you want to drop in the chat what you've been working on. Annabelle says it was difficult, but not impossible. I had to crinkle my paper several times to create a lift with my phone on it. Me too. Miss Julie, I see you with your camera on. Would you like to share what you did?
Sure. So I'll move mine a little bit and see if I can show you. I don't know what you're able to see, but let's see. So what I did, I basically circled my paper around into like a loop, pretty like a tight, almost like scroll, and I folded it in half to make a stand. I'm using my phone right now, so I used a bottle instead as a weight on top. But yes, that is what I did. I basically used a circular wrapping of the paper to make like a tube, and then I folded that into like a V shape to put the weight on top of it.
Annabelle, you mentioned crinkling your paper. How did that work out for you? Roll it up into a ball, crinkle, formed into shapes.
Yes, at first I wanted to create maybe like a table for it, but the phone was obviously too heavy for it. So once I folded it several times and it created a crinkle, I said, that's what will create the lift. And it actually, it lifted it off a couple inches, not centimeters. So I got it a little bit higher for it to stand up. So that's the good thing. So, but yeah, crinkling definitely creates that lift, that space.
I see some familiar faces in the group, but not going to call anybody out if they don't want to be on camera. I'll go ahead and even show what I did. I also kind of crinkled mine, made like a little bunch of triangle shapes to support my phone to hold it up, which first time did not work out. I made it too low. The paper just flattened out immediately. So I made a lot of smaller triangles in order for my phone to be supported. It's a good thing that I did not go with the larger model of my phone. It probably would have been a whole different set of weight issues. And I don't know if one paper would have been able to support it as well as I would have liked. The reason that I interrupt this presentation to do that kind of activity is to talk about some of the misconceptions that exist with doing STEM and doing STEAM activities. That a lot of the time when we think of STEM and STEAM projects and challenges that we should be working on with our students, we have that connotation that we have to make it really extravagant. It needs to be expensive, digital, flashy. It needs to be robots. It needs to light up and make noise. But in actuality, simple activities like this, and they're accessible. They're things that you can do with stuff that's really at your disposal around you immediately, rather than making parents or educators, whether they're formal or informal, feel like they have to break their bank in order to make sure that their students are having a successful time doing STEM. And other ways to make sure that they feel a bit more successful is integrating it into your everyday lives, finding those connections. So things like going outdoors, going on hikes and looking at the different ecosystems that are out there. What trees do students observe? What animal life is out there? Why do you think certain animals live in this environment versus that environment? Cooking, again, going back to the example I gave of understanding that cooking is about doing math. It is about doing chemistry. There are certain reasons we mix some things together, and why maybe why you don't want to add Coke into your Mentos every single time, or Mentos into your Coke. That's a little bit of backwards. Cleaning, shopping. Shopping is a big one when it comes to math. A lot of people say, I don't like math, but when we're looking at stuff to buy, or if you're doing stuff online, just most small little moments of math and that you can apply. Are there other ways that you can think of in your own everyday lives that you can connect to STEAM? Since everyone's a little bit quiet, feel free to drop those in the chat. Oop, getting ahead of myself. Or better question, what is something that you do in your everyday life that you connect to STEM or STEAM that other people might not otherwise think is connected to STEAM? Julie says, playing games, probability. Yep, when you roll that D6. Connecting my iPad, yeah, that can be it sometimes. I just need this to work. Why is this one cable not working? Maybe if I change my variable, if I change the outlet, maybe the outlet's the issue. Time management, yeah, trying to balance all of that. Selecting what to eat or drink. I like that one. Baking, I love that one. Even just getting up in the morning and going through your daily routine. I wake up, I brush my teeth, I get dressed. Those are algorithms. Those are things that we use in coding to build our software that we're using. There are a lot of little moments of STEM that tend to get overlooked in the greater name of science and technology and engineering, that it has to be these big things. Running, using distance measurements, yeah, going outside and driving. You can talk about speed, velocity. Why are some people like the speed differences on types of bikes, types of cars, and comparing them? There are a lot of different ways that STEM is a part of our everyday life that, again, are overlooked because they don't happen in a lab. But the whole entire world can be your class and your lab. You make the experiences out of it. And again, having those everyday connections makes students a lot more confident in the work that they're doing. And giving them that confidence to take those approaches every single day helps them to foster a growth mindset. And that the work that they're doing, they can improve over time, and they continue learning, focusing on the product or the process, rather than the product. But we want to focus on the steps that it takes to get there versus what the actual destination is. A lot of times students get really transfixed on the end result, especially with formal schooling in science. They teach to tests that we're all moving away from, thankfully, has discouraged students so much where they're focused on what is my end result instead of what do I do, what do I need to do to get there. And so having these everyday connections, really helping them to feel more confident in themselves and grow and understand and realize that failure is not the final thing in life. It's an opportunity for you to grow, that they can use that as a tool apart from using their laptops and their iPads. While this is now a bit more of a commonplace piece of technology that we use every day, we shouldn't be overlooking all the other items that are in tools of STEM and STEAM that can really help a child feel more confident, see themselves going into these roles. Again, going back to that slide I had about different STEM identities, making them feel confident that I might not be an engineer, but I like building things. Construction is equally as important. I like cosmetics. I like being able to make something cool and crafty, but I understand what the chemistry is. It does not need to be so cut and dry. And that's the beauty of STEAM, that it really brings those things together and needs to be focused on, because if kids can see themselves doing that, it'll help them in the long run. And that is going to be one of the major successes on their pathway. Now, one of the things that I do also have in here is a bit more of a formalized process that we use in many of our programmings, both our informal and formal programs, which is the engineering design process. Same idea, that it gives students a chance to create a narrative of what their problem is, or one's already existing for them, and figure out what the problem is and what the constraints are, and give them that opportunity to use empathy and critical thinking in order to solve their problems before they dive into trying to create a solution and improve it and make it better. It's a practice that we use a lot by asking open-ended questions and making sure that students aren't so focused on what it does at the end, but just going through that process and understanding, all right, this is what I'm working on, but what are the other things that I haven't thought about yet? And really thinking outside that box. Again, just not trying to formalize what we think STEM or STEAM should look like, really leaving it open-ended so that way all students can feel comfortable doing it. Now, earlier I had mentioned the not breaking the bank portion of that, and so I want to circle back to that. We're talking about making STEM accessible to people. We did an activity that just required a piece of paper and your imagination. But also, if you're interested in doing other STEM activities on a budget, think of all the things that you have around your house: bottle caps, yogurt cups, paper towels, toilet paper tubes. I think after this past year, a few of us might be holding on to a lot of them still that have paper on them, but hopefully you have other things around your house that you could use. and turn those into moments of, let's talk about sorting things. We're sorting recyclables. You can talk about the environmental impacts as well as size and shapes and functions. There are some local resources within San Diego if you are looking for opportunities or ways to obtain some of those materials so you can use them in your classroom. And I will be happy to include that, the actual links to that. I don't think they made it over in my presentation, but the idea is that with the STEM power and discovering your STEM power, it's in you already. You have that power all along. It's always been there. It's a matter of thinking outside that box and trying to find it and tap into those powers yourself and use them for good, hopefully, and not for evil. That is it for me. And does anyone have any questions? Open the chat. I love that image so much that we become telescopes. Anytime I get the opportunity to use that image, I do. I really do love it. That's something that we use quite frequently over here. Well, if there are no questions, Lena's gone ahead and dropped the evaluation into the chat. So if you have a moment, please make sure you fill that out, I believe by 3 o'clock today, right, Lena?
That is correct. I want to thank you very much for joining us and giving us all this amazing information and reminding us of how we all have it in us. We just need to think about it a little bit more to be able to share activities, great activities with our students. Yes, please complete the survey for this session. It's in the chat box. And if you can't do it right this moment, you have until 3 o'clock today. Once again, thank you for joining us. Thank you, Andia, and we hope to see you guys around in the STEM conference soon.